Everything that once felt solid starts to feel unstable, not because your life is falling apart, but because something inside you is waking up and refusing to go back to sleep. The goals that used to motivate you suddenly feel hollow. The routines that once kept you grounded now feel suffocating. And the most unsettling part is this: you can't explain it to anyone without sounding ungrateful or confused. That's where the real tension begins. Because this isn't burnout. It isn't laziness. It isn't a phase. It's the beginning of a personal revolution. And most people never realize what's actually happening until they're already deep inside it. Right now, the problem isn't that your life is hard. It's that your life no longer matches who you're becoming. You can sense it in quiet moments, late at night, early in the morning. That subtle pressure in your chest that says, something has to change. Even though everything looks fine on the surface, you try to ignore it. You stay busy. You distract yourself. But the feeling doesn't leave. It waits. And the longer you avoid it, the louder it gets. What most people don't understand is that this discomfort isn't here to break you. It's here to reposition you. And once you see why, the confusion starts to take on a very different meaning. At first, awakening feels like restlessness. You lose patience for things you used to tolerate. Conversations feel repetitive. Achievements feel temporary. You start asking questions you never had time for before. Why am I doing this? Who decided this path for me? What part of my life is real? And what part is just habit? These questions don't come all at once. They sneak in. And once they do, there's no unasking them. This is usually where people try to shut the process down. They tell themselves to be grateful, to stop overthinking, to get back on track. But something inside you already knows. The old track doesn't lead where you're headed anymore. Here's the part no one prepares you for. Awakening doesn't arrive gently. It challenges your identity. The version of you that knew how to survive starts losing control. The roles you mastered, being agreeable, being productive, being reliable, stop feeling fulfilling, not because they're wrong, but because they're incomplete. And when an identity starts dissolving, the mind panics. It wants labels, certainty, a clear plan, but awakening offers none of that up front. It asks you to stay present while the old map burns, and that's where most people feel like they're losing themselves. Without realizing they're actually shedding something that can't come with them. Then the internal conflict intensifies. One part of you craves growth. Another part wants comfort. One voice whispers, "You can't go back," while another begs, "Don't ruin what you've built." This tug-of-war drains your energy because it's not about making a choice. It's about becoming someone new. And becoming someone new requires letting go of who you needed to be before. That realization alone can shake you, because once you see it, you start noticing how much of your life was shaped by fear, approval, and survival instincts. And once you notice that, you can't pretend you didn't. This is when awakening starts to feel like rebellion, not against society, but against unconscious living. You catch yourself pausing before reacting. You stop agreeing automatically. You feel resistance rising when something doesn't align, even if it once did. And this shift is subtle, but powerful, because the moment you stop betraying yourself in small ways, the entire structure of your life begins to feel different. People may not know what changed, but they feel it, and some of them won't like it. That's when the revolution turns outward. Relationships begin to shift, not because you're pushing people away, but because you're no longer pulling yourself apart to keep them close. You stop explaining your boundaries before setting them. You stop overgiving to earn belonging. You stop shrinking to maintain harmony. And this is where things get uncomfortable, because clarity often looks like distance to those who are used to your confusion. They may say you're different, less available, harder to read. What they're really sensing is that they no longer have access to the old version of you. And once that door closes, there's no reopening it without losing yourself again. At the same time, your relationship with success starts changing. You still want to grow. You still want more, but the definition shifts. You start noticing how much energy certain goals actually cost you. You question whether achievement without alignment is worth the burnout. You realize that being busy isn't the same as being fulfilled. And this realization can feel dangerous because it threatens everything you were taught to chase. But once that awareness sets in, you can't unsee the difference between movement and direction. Then comes the quiet phase, the one most people misunderstand. You slow down, not because you're lost, but because you're listening. You stop forcing outcomes, you stop rushing decisions, and from the outside, it might look like you're stuck. But internally, something precise is happening. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your priorities are reorganizing. You're learning to trust internal signals instead of external pressure. And this pause isn't a delay, it's a preparation. What comes next requires a different version of you than the one who was always reacting. This is also when old emotions start surfacing. Feelings you buried under productivity, humor, or distraction begin asking for attention, not all at once, but persistently. You may feel more sensitive, more reflective, less interested in surface-level interactions, and that can be unsettling, especially if you were praised for being strong or unbothered. But strength at this stage looks different. It looks like awareness. It looks like honesty. It looks like allowing yourself to feel what you once avoided, because unresolved emotions can't exist in a more conscious mind. And once they surface, they don't leave until they're understood. As this inner clearing continues, your tolerance drops. Not for people, but for self-betrayal. You notice when you're saying yes out of fear. You feel it when you're forcing yourself into spaces that drain you. And instead of ignoring those signals, you start respecting them. This is where awakening stops being abstract and starts becoming practical. Your choices change. Your pace changes. Your standards change. And without announcing it, you begin building a life that requires less recovery from. Eventually, something stabilizes. Not your circumstances, but your center. You feel less reactive, less pulled in every direction. You don't need constant validation to stay grounded. You don't need certainty to keep moving. You develop a quiet trust in your ability to navigate uncertainty, and that trust changes everything. Because now, when challenges arise, they don't feel personal. They feel instructional. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start noticing what it's shaping in you. This is when the revolution reaches its turning point. You realize you were never meant to return to who you were before. That version did its job. It got you here. But it can't take you further. And instead of grieving that, you begin honoring it. You see your past not as a mistake, but as a foundation. You stop trying to fix yourself and start leading yourself. And that shift, from self-correction to self-leadership, is where awakening transforms from chaos into clarity. Here's the insight most people never reach. Awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about engaging with it consciously. You don't withdraw, you refine. You don't disconnect, you choose. You show up with less fear, less performance, and less internal resistance. You become grounded instead of rushed, intentional instead of reactive. And the life you build from this place feels different. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. If you're in this phase right now, understand this. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're not losing momentum. You're undergoing an internal reorganization that most people never allow themselves to experience. The discomfort you feel is the cost of alignment. The uncertainty is the price of freedom. And the clarity you're moving toward can't be rushed. It has to be integrated. The next step isn't to figure everything out. It's to stay aware. Notice what drains you. Protect what energizes you. Choose honesty over habit, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because this personal revolution isn't asking you to become someone else. It's asking you to stop abandoning who you already are. If this connected with you, thank you for staying with me until the end. That tells me you weren't just watching. You were recognizing something real inside yourself. If you want more guidance, more clarity, and more depth as you move through this shift, like the video and subscribe. Not out of obligation, but because this journey makes more sense when you walk it with intention.